This will be a short video about removing the elevation and tilt shafts on a Delta Unisaw. So I'm starting here with the internal assembly, the yoke assembly, which has the elevation shaft on it. And the back of the shaft is threaded, so I'm removing the nut, and to get enough resistance against that, I just clamped some vice grips on the shaft itself. So that came off, and then there's a fiber washer. And then the stop collar on the other side of that rear part of the yoke assembly has an Allen set screw that you can loosen up. And then the worm gear from this era of Unisaw has a rolled pin. And so once you remove the rolled pin with a pin punch, then you can start to maneuver the worm gear off. Sometimes you need to sand a little bit to help get this off. Sometimes, depending on how much grime and sawdust and so forth is built up and how much use and abuse the saw throughout its life. So there we got the stop collar off and the fiber washer, and now it's just the worm gear. So I'm going to do a little sanding here to get rid of any of the buildup to help get this off easier. And sometimes a little penetrating oil or WD-40 will help as well, and then that one just slid right off.
Okay, so I've removed the elevation shaft for the blade on this Unisaw internal assembly here. And sometimes I don't even remove this internal shaft, or excuse me, this elevation shaft. But this time I noticed there was a bend in the front. When I would spin the hand wheel, it would wobble. And if we put this on the ground here and roll it, you can see it sort of pops up a little bit right there. It's hard to see with the camera, but there's a slight bend right here. It bends just a tiny bit. Right at the bend is right where these holes are, where there's sort of a weak spot. I'm sure it got nailed with a forklift or some other machine or something in the warehouse that it was in, the factory that it was in at one point, or whatever the setting was. So to remove this, it's really pretty straightforward. The main thing to do is to remove this this nut in the back. This back of the elevation shaft is threaded, and you've got a stop collar here that goes on the other side of this bracket, and then a couple of fiber washers on either side to keep things moving. So the challenge is to remove that nut. You've got to find something to hold onto this side, and what I did, I just used vice grips on the shaft itself, and that was enough resistance to get that off. And then the other thing is to remove the worm gear, and this era of Unisaw, I believe, is probably from the 60s. Haven't got the exact date based on the serial number yet. And they held these on at this point with rolled steel pins. Okay, and a rolled pin is the same diameter all the way through. And that was a change from the original. They used tapered pins. Those are a lot harder to remove and can be confusing because the taper is so minimal that sometimes you can't tell which side is which. So to remove rolled pins, you use a pin punch, not a nail set, not a center punch. Both of these come to a point and will just sort of wedge the rolled pin. So you do not want to use these. Get those out of there. You want to use a pin punch. And pin punches are sized for the sizes of rolled pins. And they fit perfectly. See that? That is a perfect size match. And so it's not going to try to wedge the edges of the rolled pin. It's going to push it right through very easily. That was a great change when they went from the tapered pins to the rolled pins, in my opinion. A lot easier to remove. So now that's removed, and I'm going to try to work on this bend a little bit. I'm going to see if we can straighten it, or I may need to purchase a new shaft.
And now we're on to the tilt shaft, which is connected to the front trunnion bracket. And so there's a rolled pin on the worm gear here, and then there's a rolled pin in the stop collar as well. So I'm removing the rolled pin in the stop collar to get access to the bullets that are the locking bullets that lock when you tighten the hand wheel. And so I'm working on that. I'm pounding through. I've got a wooden block so I don't mushroom the shaft. And then once we get that through, then we can get those bullets out and be all set to replace them.
Okay, so similar to the elevation shaft here, I was working on the tilt shaft. This one, the little bullets that are in the shaft and push out against this casting here, when you tighten the locking knob, these are worn. So I was taking those out to purchase some new ones. Similar approach, you've got to take a rolled pin out of this and then slide the shaft to get to these. So this will be an improvement here with some new bullets in there.